You're tuning in to WellFound's Ask a Recruiter, where we sit down with recruiters to share their advice on the hiring process. Thanks again for joining. My name is Rachel. I'm here as part of WellFound and our product education and support team. Today we have Gloria Dallas, a lead recruiter at Snappr. We're really excited to have her here. I'll give her a formal introduction in just a moment. And we're going to be talking about how to stand out when everyone else has the same skills, which I think is a really common problem right now. Before I introduce Gloria, I just want to make sure everyone knows what WellFound is. If you've joined through a LinkedIn link or something like that, WellFound is a jobs marketplace. We've been around for over 10 years. Formerly, we were called AngelList Talent. So we help you get hired by cutting edge startups. And now, because we've been around for 10 years, some of those startups have become enterprise and public companies as well. And they're focused on hiring for tech roles. So design, marketing, engineering, product managers, and similar jobs. We've made over 8 million matches, and in our system, we have over 150,000 tech jobs. Awesome. Down to the good stuff. So Gloria Dallas is a lead recruiter at Snappr. She has over 10 years of experience in full cycle recruiting across startups and tech companies. She co-founded Envision Inclusion, a recruiting agency specializing in diverse pipeline building and inclusive hiring processes for over 30 clients. She began her career in technical recruiting at Google's diversity channels team and has since hired everything from AI engineers to C-suite executives. With an art history background from Stanford, she's passionate about helping non-traditional candidates leverage their unique stories to land their dream roles in competitive markets. So perfect for our topic today. Thanks so much for being here, Gloria.
No problem. Excited to be here. Also, for everybody, my voice has been cutting in and out. I was at a wedding all weekend, and so if my voice fades, it's just gonna fade. I have a lot of volume generally, so you should still be able to hear me, but just wanted to give you that heads up.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll try to take it easy on you. So to get started, we have this question from James. And his question is kind of simple. What makes a candidate memorable to recruiters and hiring managers?
Yeah, enthusiasm, honestly, is something that really sets like a good candidate apart from a great candidate. A enthusiastic candidate who has done their research on the company or is really familiar with the company, is like they've followed the company for a while. That is something that always makes hiring managers go, "Oh, interesting. Okay, like we would like to continue talking to this candidate a little bit more." If the candidate maybe isn't super familiar with the company, but is really enthusiastic about the space, even if they've never worked in that space before, that is something that can make people really excited as well. You know, if you are trying to get into, for example, the gaming industry, and maybe you've never worked in the gaming industry, but you've played lots of similar games and are just really excited to get your foot in the door, that is something that will help you stand out a lot more than pretty much anything else. Obviously hiring managers and interviewers are looking for skills, they're looking for capability, but we're in a market where a lot of people have very, very similar skills. And so, what is going to make a candidate stand out is if they seem like someone who's just really excited about the work that they're going to be doing.
Awesome. I think that's a great thing to emphasize. Um, the next question that we have is about switching industries. So Billy asks, I want to switch industries, but stay within the same role. How can I competitively sell my different background as an asset when the pool is so crowded? So for context, they've been a product manager in HR tech for 10 years, and they're looking to pivot into healthcare tech. So really just like a difference in market, but a similar role.
Yeah. So the good news is that, especially when it comes to startups and tech companies in general, sometimes the industry is really important, but a lot of times the role is a lot more important than the actual industry. So if you have that product management experience, that's going to be the thing that people care about the most. They're not necessarily going to care as much that you're coming from healthcare tech. That said, it's really helpful if you look at kind of the similarities between the companies that you've worked for in the past and the companies that you're applying to or the companies that you're interviewing with. So, for example, if there is a certain size customer that this company is going to be working with, and you're like, oh yeah, I've dealt with enterprise customers for most of my career, that is something that you're going to want to focus on. And yeah, I was very, very customer facing as a PM at this company. The customers that we were working with were 10,000 plus employees. This was like, the number of deals, like the size of the deals that we were working with. This is like how big the product implementation was. If you can show alignment on, the work that you'll be doing in this new company versus the work that you were doing at one of your former companies, that will go a long way into giving them confidence into your abilities, regardless of the industry. You also want to talk about why you want to switch industries, why you are excited about moving into the health tech space or healthcare tech space. I consulted with a couple of healthcare tech companies back when I was running Envision Inclusion. And we talked to a lot of people that were making the jump from pure tech into healthcare tech. And a lot of them had, stories behind why they want to make that jump. They would say something like, I had this my own health scare, and it's in the same space as what you're working in right now. And I just am really, really passionate about this right now. And this is something that I'd love to move into. So if you can connect some sort of personal connection to that, that makes a big difference. But I would absolutely just highlight the ways that your background align very closely with what you'd be doing at this company.
That makes so much sense. And so helpful to hear it spoken about that way. That's great. Okay, so we actually have two questions from Sam. Maybe I'll start with the first one because they're a little bit different from each other. The first question is about what's something candidates think make them stand out, but actually makes them forgettable. So what are some of the things that you see people kind of doing a little bit wrong, I guess?
Okay, so one thing that I always tell candidates to do is you should research the company before your interview, even if it's a company that you've never heard of. It's a company that, just popped up on LinkedIn and you hit apply. Now you have an interview. I always say do some research on the company before you interview. That said, we often have candidates that either because they can't find anything or they didn't have enough time to do their research, they just make up things about the company. And that can get you like almost immediately eliminated from the process. And I've worked with a lot of really, really tiny startups where you actually couldn't do any research. There's not anything you could really find. The most you would be able to find about these companies is, these are the founders, maybe how much money they raised. They have like kind of a landing page that doesn't explain what they're doing. It just says coming soon. That's completely fine. If you are interviewing with a company that has no information out there about them, they know that and they understand that, and they don't expect you to know what you can't possibly know. But occasionally with those companies, I would have candidates come in and say, oh, I've been following your company for years. I've been a customer of yours off and on for most of my career. And it's just like, it's not possible because we don't have any customers. I've had candidates say that new coworkers of mine that they didn't know. I've had candidates say that they met, our entire sales team at a convention that our sales team didn't go to. Like, I understand the motivation to try to explain that you know more than you do. But a lot of times it will blow up in your face and it's just not worth it. I think it's okay to say that you don't know things. And I will also say I've worked for a lot of companies where there's research that can be done, but the research itself is confusing. So, you might spend an hour trying to understand what the company does and come out of it going, I don't know. It has something to do with, security. I'm not entirely sure. That's okay too. It is totally fine because a lot of times the people working at the company also understand that our messaging is confusing. Our branding is super, super confusing. Like I didn't know what our company did until I started working here. We understand that. So it's okay to come in and say, yeah, I tried to do some research. I looked at your website. I think it has something to do with like security for enterprise companies, but I'm still not entirely sure what's going on. Could you explain to me a little bit more? That's totally fine. Totally fine. So I would just say, do your research on the company, but don't pretend to know what you don't actually know.
Oh, that's so funny to hear about that people do that, but it makes perfect sense. They're trying to find a connection, some way to be memorable. But they're doing it a bit in the wrong way. And I guess maybe the better strategy might be to like ask thoughtful questions about what you don't know and show your interest that way. Maybe.
Absolutely. Yeah. Ask questions about what you don't know. If there's something that you saw on the website that you were like, this was super, super confusing, you can say, hey, this part of the website was super confusing to me. Like, can you give me a little bit more context into how this is used? People love it. That actually shows that you did your research and like we're confused by the same thing that everyone on the team is confused about. Like it really, really helps. It resonates with them. Some of them are able to go back to their manager and go, see, like 5 candidates said this was confusing. Like we need to change this. They love that kind of stuff. So totally fine to ask thoughtful questions. Totally okay to say that you don't know what you don't know. And honestly, if you just for whatever reason had no time to do any research, like that might come back to bite you, but it is much better to say, I didn't really have time to do as much research as I would have liked to. So I don't really know anything, but would love to hear more from you about what the company does. That I've had a lot of candidates that I have hired who said exactly that. And it's much better than trying to make something up.
Awesome. Okay, and on to Sam's other question here, which is a question I really am excited to hear your answer to. It's if you could redesign the hiring process from scratch to better surface unconventional talent, what would you change first if you had?
Yeah, yeah. This is really hard because I think that there's not one single thing that I would redesign. There's so many things in our hiring processes right now that are so broken. So there's a lot of things that I would want to change, but the most important kind of factor that I would want to change in a hiring process is I think that interview processes need to be a lot more practical than they are theoretical. So I think that even when people talk about this with software engineering interviews, for example, that a lot of the coding interviews that they're doing are just things that they learned back in school, but not actually like the practical work that they're doing in their day to day. And I think that translates to pretty much every position where you're being asked theoretical questions. You're being asked about, situations and circumstances that wouldn't necessarily happen. And so this means that we end up missing out on a lot of people who are really, really good at their job, but not good at interviewing. And a lot of times end up hiring people who are fantastic at interviewing, but not so great at their jobs. And so I think practical interviews need to be implemented pretty much across the board. I think the hard thing with practical interviews is that a lot of times with practical interviews, that means that there's some level of work involved, which means that candidates need to be compensated. My company pays candidates for projects, which is something that I think is pretty great and very helpful. But not every company has the money or the resources to be able to do that. I've worked with a couple of companies that would do one, maybe two quick 30-minute interviews, and then they would hire the candidate as a contractor for like 2 weeks to a month. And then at the end of that, decide whether or not they wanted to hire them full time, which is great if the candidate is unemployed, not so great if the candidate has a job that they're thinking of leaving for your company. And so we do need to find a way to allow candidates to be able to give a practical demonstration of their work, get compensated for that practical demonstration, but also not have to waste a lot of their time or quit a job for something that they're not ultimately going to get. So that's what I would change. I've seen so many different kind of ways of trying to do this, and none of them are perfect yet. And so, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that reflects a lot of the things I've heard founders say. We've been doing also these interviews with founders and CEOs of companies and finding ways to like really replicate that real world, how you work experience is so informative. And I think it's a two-way street. Like I think candidates also get to know what it would be like to work at this company. Like there are
Mhm.
some benefits both ways. Yeah, I agree. Okay, on to Carmen's question. Are recruiters ready? Sorry, ready. Are recruiters reading cover letters? Do cover letters actually help a candidate stand out? And then their second question is about how are recruiters using AI when it comes to sorting through applications? Are there any tips that you can share for keywords and bullet points to include in the resume. So, we get this question a lot about both those things, and I actually have different takes from every recruiter we talk to. So I'm excited to hear yours.
Yeah, so I do hate cover letters. Generally when I'm applying to jobs, I'm not submitting cover letters. And I'm usually not reading most cover letters. I really focus on the resume when I'm, reviewing applications. I never once required cover letters be submitted for any of the jobs that I am working on. And that's because I know I'm not going to read them. So it's like really no point. The only thing I will say, so first of all, there are some hiring managers that love cover letters and are always going to require it. And, like recruiters like me can kind of talk them out of it sometimes, but sometimes we can't. And that's just is what it is. So there are a lot of hiring managers where regardless of whether or not the recruiter wants to read the cover letter, they're still going to want the submission of that. The other thing, and this is kind of going back to, I think it was the second question about switching industries. A cover letter can be helpful in providing context if you're making a big jump that doesn't really make sense on your resume. So, if, for example, you want to take a step back from a manager position to an IC role, um, a lot of hiring managers and recruiters are going to be very confused about that unless you can explain why you want to do that in a cover letter. If you are going from being a founder of your company to someone that, wants to work at an IC position at someone else's startup, this is context that is going to be really, really helpful to explain in a cover letter. So I think myself personally, if I was applying to jobs today, the only reason I would ever submit a cover letter is if I was making an industry jump, a career jump, if I was doing something that just doesn't really make sense and I wanted to explain why I was doing it. That's when I would use a cover letter. And I will say that there have like the only cover letters that I do read are ones that are explaining this, where I look at the person's application and go, why is this person applying to this role? And then I look at the cover letter and I go, oh, okay, okay, cool. And there have been times too where, someone I can't figure out why this person would apply to this position. And then I just email them and say, like, why did you apply to this position? I want to make it clear that this is what the position is. And then they'll send me an email explaining why. And I go, oh, okay, yeah, that's totally fine. We'll interview you. So that is when cover letters are helpful. I would say that's the situation, but not for every single job. I really don't think they're necessary for every job. Um, when it comes to AI, so AI right now is kind of being used at a lot of different parts of recruiting, including like interviews. I have note takers that are taking notes when I'm doing interviewing. I have AI is a part of like LinkedIn Recruiter Seat and helps you with your searches. AI is a big part of a lot of like ATSs and resume reviews. One thing that I do want to clarify is that if you're getting rejected, unless it's from a knockout question, which knockout questions are usually for logistical things like, can you work from the office in San Francisco? Would you need any sort of visa sponsorship? Stuff like that. Unless you answer a knockout question in a way that we say, like, anyone that answers no to being able to work from San Francisco, usually you're getting rejected by a person. Now, with AI, in a lot of like application sorting. AI will filter through the applications and put the ones that seem like a closer match on top. Um, and depending on the tool that you're using, AI will sometimes give an application a score. So it'll say this person is like a 100% match for the job description. This person is an 86% match for the job description. And the AI tools that we use will usually also explain why. We'll say like, it has these five qualifications, but not this one. Um, I think that we are still at a place where AI is not quite there yet, where you can rely on it 100% to be able to, filter and read through your applications, which is why I don't know anyone that is using it 100%. I make sure that I'm still reviewing applications because I will see applications that AI said was like a 100% match. And I'm like, this is absolutely not what I wanted. And then I will see applications that AI said was like a 40% match. And I'm like, this person is perfect. And so we're still kind of training the AI that we're using in like all of our different tools. So it is still mostly people that are reviewing everything. When it comes to like keywords, my biggest suggestion, and this is the biggest suggestion that I have for this, go to the job description and make sure that you are taking the keywords from the job description and putting those in your resume. And this is something that I think a lot of people think feels obvious, but it's not quite, you know? So if there is a certain tool that we say that you need to use in the job description and it's not on your resume, put that on your resume because you might think that, oh, well, I'm a salesperson. Everyone uses Salesforce. It's totally fine. Like that's self-explanatory. It needs to be in your resume. And I would also say when it comes to those tools and technologies that are in the job description, you also want to put them in the jobs, like the description of each job themselves on your resume. So a lot of times we want to know that you are working with Salesforce within the last 5 years, for example, because things change over time. And so if we can see in your resume that you've been using Salesforce at your most recent job, that is something that helps a lot. Definitely use the job description. I will also say, look through like a variety of job descriptions that you're applying to and see which tools and skills are constantly repeating across all these different job descriptions. Add those to your resume. This will definitely help them stand out because when we're using AI tools, we're telling the AI, I need someone with TypeScript experience. I need them to work full stack. I need them to have worked at an early stage startup. I need them to have, and if the AI is basically just trying to read these things in your resume. And if it doesn't see some of those things explicitly stated, it's going to rank you a little bit lower. So, yeah, I would just use the job description as a cheat sheet.
Awesome. I always wondered about why people put skills per work experience. So you kind of filled in a blank for me there as well. We have a couple of questions in the chat that are actually just kind of related exactly to what you're talking about. So maybe I'm going to read out just those
Okay.
on topic. One second. Yeah, Dennis asked a easy question. Is it true that applicant tracking systems prefer resume files with a docx extension rather than PDF?
Dennis, I love this question. I'm so glad that you asked this. I was going to rant about this at some point today, even if no one asked about it. PDF is almost always the preferred choice. PDF, not docx. And I'm going to tell you why. I almost every ATS I've used, and I've used pretty much every single ATS that's on the market right now. Almost every ATS I use, you submit it as a PDF, it's readable, the formatting stays the way that it should, everything's fine. DocX, up in the air. I have had it to the point where some resumes that have been submitted in a DocX format, it just turns it into gibberish. Like I, as a human, cannot read it. And that's a problem sometimes because if I have, 300 applications that I'm going through, I might not have time to reach out to every person whose resume was eaten up by the ATS and say, hey, I cannot read your resume. Can you resubmit it as a PDF? If I have like 20 applicants, I'll reach out to people and say like, hey, can't read your resume. Can you resubmit it? But if it's hundreds, I might just have to reject that person because I can't read the resume, or I'll just skip the application and try to come back to it later on if we don't have enough candidates. And so, yeah, as a PDF, I think that this idea that it's preferred as a docx actually comes from a lot of agency recruiters. Um, I, as an agency recruiter, didn't work this way. Like when I was running our agency, we were working basically as in-house recruiters for each of our clients until we were done working with them. But a lot of agency recruiters, they are getting your resume and then they're sending it to multiple clients. And based on your resume, sometimes they are making edits to your resume to appeal to each of the different clients. And they can only edit it if you submitted it as a docx. And so they will then take it and submit it as a PDF most of the time, but they're editing it first. I never edit candidates' resumes. If I want them to edit their resume in some way, I'll just ask them to edit it in some way. But generally speaking, if you are applying through a company website, a career page, LinkedIn, if you're applying directly to a company, you need to submit it as a PDF because you do not want to know what it's going to turn into on the other side. You want to make sure that it is legible to humanize. So, yeah.
So revealing. I love that. And Mike had a question that was specific to cover letters. When companies make cover letters optional, are you handicapping yourself by not submitting one? And I think your answer is probably no, but
The answer is no. If companies are making cover letters optional, they're probably thinking the way that I do, which is like, I'm not going to read most cover letters, but if I'm confused by your resume and I want to know why you're making the choice that you're making, then a cover letter would be really helpful.
nice. Okay. The other questions I'll save. I'll keep going with our prepared ones. So Alessandro asks a specific question. How do you stand out in the tech industry if you are older than the average worker, as ageism does exist, which is not really a question. I think it does exist. So what kind of things can you do to kind of mitigate that?
Yeah, ageism definitely does exist. And unfortunately, right now, we're in a space where like ageism kind of exists on both ends of the extreme, where if you have too much experience, a lot of times you are being rejected. If you have no experience, you're being automatically rejected. It's a very weird time where everybody kind of has to be in the middle to be able to get a job, and I don't really understand that. That said, if you are worried about being rejected for having too much experience, there are a few things that you can do. One, and this is true for everyone, I always say to limit your resume to the last 10 to 15 years of your experience. That's partially just because so many things change over the course of 20, 30 years that a lot of the things that you're doing in your earlier jobs probably aren't as relevant to the jobs that you're applying to now. So regardless of who you are, need to knock off things at the bottom of your resume as you get more and more experience. Um, Another thing that I would do, especially if you are someone who, for example, is trying to get into a new industry, maybe you have a lot of experience in a particular industry, like decades of experience in a particular industry, but you're trying to break into something new or trying to break into a new company. One thing that you want to do as well is show that your skills are relevant. So you have the experience, and that's something that's going to be really attractive to a lot of companies, but they want to make sure that you're working with the newer tools, that you are experienced in a lot of newer technologies. And so you want to show that. And that can be through projects that you build on the side, any new technologies that you're working with there. That can be through certifications. You can take classes for free through LinkedIn Learning. If you have a library card in most cities, you can take some classes and kind of make sure that you're up to date on the newest versions of different softwares. And so that is also something that I would highlight in your interviews is like, you are still working with these technologies. You know exactly how the newest versions of them are operating. You can talk about new features. That is something that will help out because if you can show that you can work with today's tech and that you can kind of hit the ground running at your job and you can easily be onboarded, easily learn new things, but you also have a good amount of experience behind you. That is something that will make you very attractive as a candidate. And I will also say, we have definitely hired people who had a lot more experience than what we were looking for originally for a role. And they've been really amazing in the positions that they're in just because they do have a lot of experience. They do have a lot of context. They've worked with companies, that were small like ours, and they've built them up to much larger companies. And they can speak to that. Like, I've done this before. The playbook, like the tools change, but the playbook hasn't. That is something that really can be very attractive to a company.
Awesome. I love that tangible advice. That's great. So that was our 5 questions that we're going to start with. What I'm going to do is go back in the chat and I'm going to call on you and see if you want to read out loud. If you don't, that's totally fine. Let me know that too. I'm going to start with a question from Sean, who actually I've got 2 questions that were privately sent, which is totally fine. But I know that this one came in early. So Sean wanted me to read this. How um, how do you get your application to stand out so the recruiter even looks at your resume and cover letter. For many of, we actually had a similar question in the chat, so I won't repeat this one, but for many roles, there are hundreds of applicants. So yeah, what advice do you have for the actual app? It sounds like for the actual application materials outside of just that matching of keywords, I guess.
Yeah, the matching of keywords is a big one, I will say. And I think, again, a lot of people think that they're matching the keywords pretty closely, where they think I have all of the skills in this resume or in this job description. So I should be, it should be very easy for me to get hired here. But they don't. They're saying, like they have all of this experience as like a demand generation marketer, but they're not using the tools that we're asking for, or they're not listing the tools that we're asking for. So that is one really big thing. Another thing that helps a lot is, if you this helps in particular if you are really trying to tailor your resume to that company. I don't always do that, and I don't recommend it because it's a lot of work for what's not a great amount of payoff. But if there is a company that you're like, no, I really, really want to work for this company, and I'm very, very excited about it. One thing that can help is also showing that companies that you've worked for align with that company. So like right now, for example, the company that I'm working with, we are a photography marketplace. We have AI, we're working in computer vision a lot. And so anytime someone highlights the fact that they also have worked at a marketplace before, that's something that makes them stand out. Anytime someone highlights the fact that they've worked in computer vision technologies, that makes them stand out. Neither of those are requirements, but it is something that does help them stand out quite a bit. And then on top of that, this again isn't always going to work, but I will say it has worked for me a lot. Someone submits an application and then they'll just find me on LinkedIn and send me a message and say like, hey, I've been working at, this computer vision startup for the last 5 years. I just saw that Snappr is also working in computer vision and that you have a product management position that's up. I think I'd be a really good fit. Just wanted to let you know that I submitted my application. Hope we can chat at some point. That also helps because sometimes, it is like 500 people have applied, but you just messaged me and now I can take a look at your LinkedIn profile really quickly and go, oh yeah, this person's a good fit. And then I can go really quickly just pluck you out of that pool of applicants and have a conversation with you. So I think those are the biggest ways that I would try to stand out. And they're not super, super high effort. It's not something that I would do for literally every single job that I'm applying to, but it is something that I would do for every job that I was excited about.
Oh, great tips. I haven't heard the alignment of the previous companies before, so that's so helpful.
Yeah.
And the first question that we got in the chat's kind of related to what you put on your resume, at least. And Margaret asked, hard skills versus soft skills, which to emphasize? And it's a thoughtful question.
Yeah. You emphasize your hard skills first. So your hard skills are what should be emphasized in your resume. They're what should be emphasized in your LinkedIn profile. They're what should be emphasized in like maybe your initial conversations with like the recruiter. Those are the things that you want to emphasize. That's specifically because the hard skills are the things that most companies don't really want to train for right now. And so they want to make sure that you know what it is that you're working on. So that is what I would emphasize first. The soft skills are what I would be emphasizing throughout the interview process. So, yes, you can show that you've worked in these 5 tools. You can show that you know how to work with this type of technology. You can show that you've worked with the company from this type of industry before. That's all great. Now you want to show that you are a good teammate. You want to show that you know how to own your mistakes. You want to show that you're really good at conflict management. You want to show that you are great for a customer facing role. You want to show all of that because that is what's going to set you apart. Because a lot of times, and this is particularly true in this market, we have so many people that have all of the hard skills. Like we have so many applicants that have all the hard skills. So usually we're not going to interview someone that doesn't have all of the hard skills unless it's a role that we're pretty flexible on. But then the person that we ultimately end up hiring is the person that has the best soft skills out of that group. And so, we're hiring the person that we feel like we would be very excited to put this person in front of our customers, or this person seems like someone that I'd be very excited to work with because like they seem to take a lot of ownership. They have a lot of leadership skills here. This person seems like someone that we are going to promote in the next year or so. Like this is someone like, yeah, they're coming in for like a mid-level role, but I can see them in a year or two being a leadership position, and I think they'd be a great asset for that. So hard skills for the application, soft skills for the interview process is what I'd say.
That makes so much sense. Um, thank you. So Cece is asking a question. I want to know if Cece wants to ask it out loud.
Yes, sure. Let's see here. What did I write? Scrolling back up. What are the names of the kinds of AI tools that recruiters are using for scoring candidates? I'm personally interested in using it on myself. If there's a way I can toss my resume in and then put in like a job posting, kind of seeing how that stuff kind of adds up, I think it would be uh, pretty helpful.
That's a really good question. And I think that would also be very helpful. Most of these tools, I'm not going to lie, I don't know if you can get a, um, like single person contract for these. I think a lot of them are really only being sold to companies. One of the tools that I'm using right now is called Endorsed AI. It is very new. It is extremely, extremely new. We got connected through the founder, and we did a lot of like workshopping with them. But Endorsed AI right now is the main tool that we're using that is reviewing all of our resumes and kind of giving them a first look and ranking them for us. We're still reviewing all of the resumes as they come in, but it's nice to have Endorsed AI help out with that. Um, a lot of different ATSs do also have their own rankings. Ashby has a lot of AI integrated into it. Greenhouse has AI integrated into it. A lot of the applicant tracking systems, and those are things that you're not going to be able to get access to as a just as a regular consumer. However, I do think you might actually be able to use Juicebox and try that out. Juicebox AI, this is not reading your resume, but what it is doing is it is finding your LinkedIn profile, your GitHub, any like kind of places that you might have your work across the internet. And it is kind of matching you to the search that people are putting in. So that might be something that you can definitely use Juicebox for free. I can't remember, or you can try Juicebox for free. I cannot remember if you need to have like a company email to be able to sign up, or if you can just try it for free with like your Gmail. But that would show you like if I were to run this kind of search for this type of candidate, if you would pull up and how high you'd be ranked in those search results. So I would try Juicebox AI. I'm trying to think of anything else that might be accessible for consumers to use. But I can't really think of anything else right now.
Great. Thank you.
Mhm.
And I'll also just plug in August, watch out for an invite for it. We're having a recruiter that focuses on sourcing, and he's going to do some demos to show candidates what it looks like when someone's sourcing, which isn't the exact same as like being AI reviewed, but I think it might touch on some of the filtering that happens for candidate profiles, and it might be kind of cool to look at the sort of inside, behind the scenes kind of searches that recruiters are doing. So watch out for that one.
Yeah.
Um, let me find the next question. Sorry. Here we go. Oh, great. Looks like Alejandro plugged Juicebox in the chat under CC's question if people want to check it out. Okay, Jonathan has a question about AI HR tools. Jonathan, do you want to ask your question out loud? Maybe not. I can ask it out loud. So he asks, how do you maximize the chance of HR AI tools placing your resume at the top of the list? Oh, this is the one that was similar to the one that Sean asked.
Yeah, yeah. Again, it's the keywords. It is also formatting, honestly, like you want to make sure that the ATS or the AI tool can read it. So again, submitting as a PDF is going to be a big thing there. It is also like really thinking in detail about like the work you've done and the experience that you've had that you might not feel is necessary to put on your resume, but can really help you rank higher than others. So, like for example, there is a manager position that I am filling right now, and it would be great for us if the person has managed a team of like 15 to 20 people. And I am constantly going through resumes, not sure if like this person has managed a team or what size the team they've managed is. If you can say, manage a team of this size and that shows up in your resume, the AI is going to rank it higher. Um, if you can, again, the tools and technologies that you've worked with, if you can mention like the company size that you're working at. Sometimes I'm looking for roles where it's like, we would love to have someone who's come from an early stage startup. You can say, this company was a Series A startup or a Series B startup, and that will help the AI understand, oh yeah, this person needs to be ranked higher. Sometimes we're looking for people that are coming from like, a large enterprise company. You can say, this is a large enterprise company. Again, a lot of the AI tools, they have a database of different companies, or they can do a search of the company as they're reading your resume. And so they can usually figure that out. But sometimes if the company is like really obscure or, the AI is just wrong, it can really help if you just kind of spell it out for the AI. Like, this is a Series B computer vision startup is something that will help people that are looking for an early stage computer vision startup find you kind of closer to the top.
Makes so much sense. We have another question about resumes. Joey, do you mind reading yours out loud? Because I'm not sure I totally understand your question, if I'm honest.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't know how to make it make sense writing it out. But essentially, like if you're showing a promotion at an organization, where you have company name, title of the role, your bullets, and then the first job you had, before the promotion, job title, bullets. I've seen on applications where I've had to like upload my resume on, let's say, like Workday or something, and then it auto fills where it has each thing put in, not just upload your resume, but fill it all in on their app. And it fills in with that first one not showing a company. So it doesn't look connected. I don't know if that matters or if that shows up in normal ATSs when you're not filling it in, but just uploading the file, or if that's something that could detract points because it looks like that experience isn't connected to any company or year, or if that matters at all.
I completely understand what you're saying. And first of all, like, do not try to orient your job search around how Workday works because it's pretty awful. And also not the way that a lot of ATSs work. So, I know a lot of companies use Workday, but it's a lot, and it operates pretty differently from a lot of other ATSs. I think it is really important to show your promotions on your resume and on your LinkedIn profile, especially if you've been with a company for a while. If you've been with a company for like 5 years and you're not showing the different promotions that you had in that time, sometimes it's a little bit of a red flag for a hiring manager where they're just like, did they just stay in this one position and never get a promotion for all of this time? So I think it's really, really important to show your promotions. I would do company and then most recent job and then first job that way, like in that order. Um, when it comes to the formatting of that, when it comes to something like Workday, what I would probably do is company and most recent job for like what is actually being submitted, and then in the description also put your second job and kind of what that promotion was. Just put it in the description there. For most ATSs, it's totally fine as long as you submit it as a PDF. It should retain that format and show up the way that you want it to. And LinkedIn also allows you to be able to show like promotions for the same company. So. Um, yeah, but you should put your promotions on your resume.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Awesome. We have a question from Pavan. Pavan, do you want to ask out loud?
Yeah, sure. So my question is like, I've been trying like bunch of different strategies where like I'm tailoring my resume for few application. I've also done like blind application where I see like, okay, this role matches my tech stack, and this is the requirement. So I'll just like blindly apply to those 20, 30 roles without tailoring my resume. I tried reaching out to like hiring managers, recruiters, and even like tried to got the referrals, but so far like nothing is working out for me. I have not landed a single interview, so I'm not sure like where I could be going wrong or what exactly I could be missing. Right, and right now like I'm currently looking for software engineering roles, entry level, like 0 to 2 years of experience.
Yeah. So for this particular case, I think the problem is that it is a role specific issue that is kind of happening across the board for software engineers. A lot of companies are not hiring entry level software engineers. So like that doesn't really have anything to do with you. I think that this is like an industry problem right now. A lot of companies are not hiring software engineers, entry level software engineers. One thing that I think can help a lot is starting your own small company. It doesn't have to be a company that's making money, honestly. Start your own small company, build your own product. That is something that will look a little bit better, or even work with some friends. This is something that I have seen work for engineers who have only internship experience or very limited experience. What has been working for them now is starting something with their friends, and even if again it's not making any money, even if it's just really a glorified side project, like companies don't know that. They just know like it was something small, you did it for 6 months, and now you have some industry experience. That is something that I think would be the best. It's really unfortunate because when I first started my career, I was hiring like entry level software engineers across the board. And then while I was at Google, which was, I started at Google at 2015, so it was 10 years ago, like in the later half of my time at Google, they put a pause on all entry level software engineers. And since then, I don't think I've worked. I'm just now about to launch a entry level software engineer position, but up until that point, like up until literally now, I have not been hiring entry level software engineers, and it's just something that is a problem with the industry. One other thing I will say is it would be very, very helpful to broaden your tech stack. And if that is through training, if that is through, side projects, that is something that can be very, very helpful. A lot of tech companies right now are working in like a TypeScript tech stack. So if you can show that you have experience in TypeScript, React, Node, that will open up a lot of doors for you. I have, I would say like focus on some projects in a TypeScript tech stack, focus on some projects in a Java tech stack, do some projects in like a Python tech stack. But like if you do all three of those, that should broaden the number of positions that are available to you. Because right now, if you're entry level, even if a company is hiring entry level, they're not going to train someone that is not experienced in their tech stack right now. So um, that's what I would do right now. But yeah, I think that's not really a you problem. That's more of an industry problem.
Thanks, Gloria. Some helpful tips there for what is, I'm sure, a very frustrating problem for Pavan and other entry level engineers. Adam S has an interesting question. Adam, do you want to ask your question aloud?
So I actually had two questions. I'll go with the first one. If you have a career portfolio highlight deck that you've made, not long, maybe 8 slides, is it helpful to attach it as a cover letter in the additional attachment field, or is that ever going to get seen at all?
Um, it depends on the position. Like, if you could link to a portfolio from like your personal website, I would recommend doing that as opposed to attaching it in the cover letter. Just because if it is a lot of slides, sometimes recruiters are just going to go like, I don't think I'm going to go through all of this right now, especially if you're the only one that's doing that. But if you can link your portfolio in the cover letter or in your resume, that is something that is really, really helpful, especially, a lot of companies do eventually want to be able to see your portfolio. They just don't usually want to see it in the application.
Noted. That's really helpful. Thank you. And then the second question is, you mentioned earlier, you talked about managing a team as an example of something you might look for in your rankings. Now, if you had managed a team, but someone in the resume put led a team or directed a team, would that rank you lower, or is that how does that work when you're looking and ranking?
You know what's really funny is I'm not even entirely sure about the answer to that question as far as like how AI would read that. I think based on the way that the AI tools I'm using right now are so literal, I might actually say managed a team as opposed to trying to use like led or directed or like any like kind of fancier action verbs. And the only reason I'm saying that, I'm going to give you an example of something. I am hiring a product manager right now. It's not an actual manager, but like a product manager. I asked the AI tool that we're using to sort resumes to find me people that have at least 5 years of product management experience. And it pulled up a lot of people who are working on completely different things in completely different industries. And I could not figure out what was going on. So I was rejecting candidate after candidate. The AI was saying like, hey, I thought these candidates were like a really good fit. Tell me what's wrong. And it finally turned out that I had to rephrase the sentence as looking for someone with at least 5 years of experience as a product manager. Like the AI was so literal in that situation that it just kind of it needed me to be extremely explicit about that, which is part of the reason that I think it's really important that recruiters are actually reading through all the applications instead of relying on AI entirely. Um, so yeah, I think if you're trying to get your resume ranked a little bit higher, you might need to be a little bit more literal when it comes to these things and say, managed a team of X number of people, as opposed to led or spearheaded or, whatever it is that you want to, that might sound a little bit better to a person. That's probably what I do.
Got it. Thank
Awesome. Priyanka, do you want to ask your question out loud? If you're there still. Okay, I'm gonna ask for her. It's a bit of a spicy question. She asked, do companies know if you were laid off or fired from previous companies? They say, AKA, does the reference check give those exact details?
That's a good question. It also depends on the company. So a lot of early stage startups are not doing super elaborate background checks. They are checking references. And so when it comes to references, that really just depends on if your reference says anything about you getting laid off or getting fired. I'll say this, I have definitely been, and this is not I'm not saying this in a way that's supposed to scare you. I'm saying this as like, this is something that's very, very helpful. I have been sent lists of laid off talent from companies pretty consistently. And they mean it in a helpful way where they're like, these are all great employees, but we had to cut like 20% of our staff. So if you can find positions for any of these people, here's all of their contact information, stuff like that. I get those pretty regularly. And I think that sometimes I'll reach out to some of the candidates from those lists and I know that they're laid off, but they feel wary of telling me that they're laid off. And it's okay. I'm not asking, but I do know a lot of times. I also have alerts set up for layoffs in different industries. So sometimes I'm reaching out to people specifically because I know like, hey, like this entire team at this company was laid off. I just saw it on Google. And like, that's part of the reason that I'm reaching out to you. So it's not always a secret, honestly, when it comes to being laid off or when it comes to being laid off. I also don't I personally don't think there's any shame in being laid off. I know that there are some hiring managers that feel differently, but I feel like, especially in this market that we're in, where layoffs are so common, I think that percentage of hiring managers that feel that way is getting smaller and smaller. So it's okay to say, like the reason that I left company X is because of some restructuring and my role was eliminated or my role was made redundant. When it comes to being fired, usually we don't know unless one of your references tells us. There have been occasions where, someone from the company happens to know someone from that company, and then they might do a back channel reference, which I don't always agree with. And then they might find out that way. But usually we only know if one of your references tells us. When it comes to background checks are usually just determining how long you were working at that company and making sure that you actually did work at that company when you said you did. So that's about as extensive. The background checks don't usually start doing like, sometimes they'll call the companies that you worked with if they're having a hard time finding like the official documentation. But usually they're just verifying that you worked at said company as an official employee from the days that you said you did. So yeah.
Very helpful, very illuminating, everything that goes on in the background. Okay, we don't have much time left, but I'll ask this final question. Let me just take a little peek at what we've got. Yeah, I don't think we're going to get to everybody today, but I'll talk a little bit about how you can ask your questions and how I might be able to answer them after the session. So the very last question I'll ask is from Michelle. She asks, what is the best practice for when someone makes a post for a job on LinkedIn? Send them a message before applying, commenting after you apply. So I think she's referring to like when a recruiter or a friend at a different company says that they're hiring for a role, like how to kind of follow up on that.
Yeah, I don't think there's like any particular right answer for this. I think what's easier for me is if you apply and then send me a message. I don't make posts on LinkedIn whenever I'm posting a job. But if I were applying and then sending me a comment saying, hey, I just applied would also work. But I think what usually tends to be like easiest and most seamless for me is applying and then sending me a quick message letting me know that you applied. And then I'll just take a look at your profile and decide whether or not we're moving forward from there. So, and that way, it's also like the easiest way to get like a quick response where, you know, a lot of times people reach out to me and say, you know, hey, I just applied. I'm super interested in this position. And I'm just like, I unfortunately am like, we're not going to be able to move forward with you because of reasons X, Y, and Z. But it's a nice way to get like quick, easy feedback from a human if you apply that way. So, yeah.
Awesome. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Gloria. This was awesome. You really illuminated some dark corners of like the recruiting process for me, and so I'm sure it's helpful for other people too, or at least I hope it is. Just a couple of notes to our audience today. You can join our Discord. Alejandro just posted it in the chat. That's a good way to get your questions answered if I know the answer. So if you write it into the webinar discussion channel after you join, I'll try my best to pop in there over the next couple hours, and I can see looking back at some of the things that other recruiters have said or what Gloria said, summarizing some of those things or just things that I know from working at WellFound for the last 4 years. I'm happy to help in any way I can. So feel free to jump in there and hopefully I've got some things to share with you. And then we also ask that you please fill out our survey. Ask Your Recruiter's been going on for a little while now, but it's still evolving. We're trying different things. I'm really open to topic suggestions and any other feedback you might have for us. And also this is a great way of signing up to always be on the invitation list for the upcoming webinars and Q&A sessions. So that just ensures that you're going to get an email. So if you're enjoying these, if they're helpful, please make sure to fill out the survey. And that's it. Thank you all so much for coming. You'll get a follow-up email with the full recording. And then some other tips and resources. Alejandro shared some things, but I'll try to repeat those there too so nothing gets lost. All right. Thank you so much again, Gloria. This was wonderful. Really appreciate you spending time with us today.
Thank you all. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this.
Oh, good. I didn't strain your voice too much.
Yeah. No, it was fun.
Ready to find your next role or discover top talent? Visit us at wellfound.com.